What are Azure Functions? Before we discuss Azure Functions, let's see what serverless means. Here is one of the simplest definitions of serverless computing you will find on the web. Serverless is an execution model where the cloud provider is responsible for executing a piece of code, also known as a function, by dynamically allocating the resources for its execution. There are few important things to remember about serverless. First, the cloud vendor is in control of the environment, which means that you need to pay attention to the runtime versions and dependencies. Most of the time, you can bring your own dependencies, but you should test the incompatibility issues. Also, this may have an impact on the security of your serverless application. Second, the runtime is dynamically created. Quite often, this is done with the help of containers, and depending on how many dependencies you have, the start time of your function may be longer. Most of the time, functions are stateless, which means that you cannot save data locally and rely that you will be able to access it between runs. Of course, now cloud vendors, including Azure, offer the so-called durable functions where you can share state between runs. Despite this, there are certain architectural and design patterns that you should follow when working with serverless. Last but not least, the execution time for serverless applications is limited. What that means is that they cannot be long-running and often are limited to several minutes. If your code doesn't complete within the allotted time, it will be terminated automatically by the vendor. This means is that you should implement small, well-defined tasks that can be executed relatively fast. Azure Function is a service on Azure that allows you to run serverless applications. Azure Functions is targeted to application developers and DevOps people who are interested in implementing functionality and don't want to deal with managing infrastructure. Azure has other services that allow you to run serverless applications that we will discuss in the next lecture. Azure Functions allow you to choose from several programming or scripting languages including C#, Java, JavaScript, Python, PowerShell, and others. It has integrated security allowing you to protect your HTTP triggered functions with OAuth providers like Azure Active Directory, Google, Twitter, Facebook, or Microsoft account. It also integrates with Azure Key Vault that you can use to store configuration secrets. We will look at those in detail in one of the modules in this course. Azure Functions have also simplified integration with other Azure services like Azure Storage, EventGrid, Cosmos DB, or Twilio. Development of Azure Functions allows you to use various DevOps tools like GitHub and Azure DevOps services for continuous integration and continuous delivery. And last, Azure Functions runtime is open source and available in GitHub. Now, let's compare the different serverless options in Azure.